The jet moved like a silver arrow through the clouds, steady and serene against the evening sky. Inside, the cabin was dim, bathed in the soft glow of overhead lights and the rhythmic whisper of air vents. Passengers dozed, screens flickered, and somewhere near the front, a man in a dark suit sat perfectly still, staring out of the window as if trying to see past the reflection of his own face. He was the kind of man people recognized, the headline name, the keynote speaker, the CEO who built empires and broke records. But here, 30,000 feet above the world, he looked nothing like the photographs in glossy magazines. His tie was loosened, his cufflinks undone. His fingers, long and precise from years of pointing at charts and signing deals, now trembled slightly as they traced the condensation on the window. He wasn't thinking about numbers tonight. He was thinking about silence, the kind that had followed him home every night for years. The silence of empty penthouses, of unanswered messages, of a phone that rang only for business. Somewhere in that silence, he'd lost something he couldn't quite name. In his lap sat a crumpled envelope. It had been folded, unfolded, rewritten, and never sent. The handwriting on it was messy, uneven, nothing like his signature on contracts worth millions. It was addressed simply, "To Emma." He sighed. The engines hummed. Outside, clouds drifted by like slow-moving ghosts. A flight attendant paused beside him with a polite smile. "Would you like something to drink, sir? Coffee? Wine?" He shook his head. "Just water, thank you." As she moved on, he glanced down at his reflection again. The man looking back at him had tired eyes, eyes that hadn't cried in 20 years. He wondered, absently, if they still could. That's when he heard it, a voice so small it barely carried over the hum of the engines. "Why are you so sad?" He blinked, startled, and turned. A little girl sat 2 seats over, her legs swinging, a stuffed bear clutched tightly in her arms. Her eyes were bright, curious, and impossibly honest. The CEO let out a soft laugh, short, unsure. "Sad? No, I'm just tired." But the girl tilted her head. "No," she said thoughtfully. "Tired people don't look like that." And for the first time in a long while, he didn't have an answer. He tried to smile after that, tried to tuck her words away like the rest of the noise he didn't want to deal with. But they lingered. "Tired people don't look like that." The sentence echoed quietly in his mind as the plane hummed forward, steady and unfeeling. The little girl was still watching him, eyes wide and unblinking, the way only children could stare without shame. Her mother gave an apologetic look from the next seat over. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. "She tends to talk to everyone." The CEO shook his head, forcing a polite grin. "No trouble at all." He tried to return his gaze to the window, to lose himself in the cotton ocean of clouds, but his reflection betrayed him, the faint downturn of his lips, the exhaustion carved deep into his expression. The kind of face that didn't look old, exactly, but worn in a way that couldn't be fixed with rest or money. "Do you miss someone?" the girl asked suddenly. Her voice was gentle, curious, yet it landed like a strike to the chest. He blinked, startled by how easily she had cut to the truth. For a moment, he said nothing. His throat felt dry, his breath thin. Then, finally, he managed, "Yes. Someone I haven't seen in a long time." The girl nodded solemnly, as though she understood far more than a 6-year-old should. "Did they go far away?" He hesitated. "No," he thought bitterly. "I did." Instead, he said, something like that. The girl hugged her stuffed bear closer. "My dad goes far. Away a lot," she said softly. "He says it's for work, but I think it's because grown-ups forget how to stay." The words hit him harder than he expected. He felt his heart twist, that simple, childish truth burning through layers of excuses and pride. He looked down at the letter again. The edges were creased, the ink smudged where his hand had lingered too long. "Maybe you're right," he murmured. The girl smiled a little. "You should tell the person you miss them. Maybe they're sad too." He met her gaze, those innocent, fearless eyes, and managed a small nod. "Maybe I will." She grinned, satisfied, and turned her attention to her coloring book, humming quietly as if the world had just been fixed. He sat there for a long while, holding the letter, feeling its weight, and for the first time in years, wanting to do something about it. The plane trembled slightly at first, a gentle shiver that rippled through the seats. The captain's voice came over the intercom, calm and practiced. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a bit of turbulence. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." The CEO barely heard him. He was still staring at the letter in his hands, the one addressed to Emma. His daughter's name. Even seeing it written in his own handwriting made something in his chest ache. He unfolded the paper, reading the same half-sentences he had written months ago, somewhere between board meetings and empty hotel rooms. "Dear Emma, I know I haven't been there. I know I missed things. I hope you understand." That's where it had always stopped. Every time he tried to finish it, the words turned to stone in his throat. What could he say that would undo years of silence? How do you write "I'm sorry" to someone who stopped waiting for it? The plane jolted again, harder this time. A few gasps broke the quiet, followed by nervous laughter. A cup clattered to the floor somewhere behind him. But he didn't move. His knuckles were white on the armrest, though not from fear of falling, from something deeper. The little girl's words echoed again. "Maybe you should tell her you miss her." He thought of Emma, 7 years old, standing in the doorway as he packed his suitcase. "You'll come to my recital, right?" she had asked. He'd smiled, distracted, saying the same thing he always did, "Of course, sweetheart." But he hadn't. And then came more trips, more missed birthdays, more gifts sent by assistants who never met her. The plane steadied, gliding again. The hum returned, softer now. He took a deep breath, pulled out his pen, and began to write. "Dear Emma, I'm sorry I missed your recitals. I'm sorry I thought success would make up for my absence. It didn't. None of it did. You were right to stop believing me. But I never stopped thinking of you. Not once." He paused, eyes blurring. The ink smudged where a tear landed, the first in decades. He let it fall, unashamed. For the first time in his life, he wasn't writing to impress, persuade, or command. He was writing to feel. And as the engines whispered through the quiet sky, he kept writing, line after trembling line, until the letter finally felt complete. By the time the captain announced the descent, the sky outside had softened into a muted gold. Clouds thinned, revealing streaks of sunlight spilling over the horizon like brushstrokes. The CEO sat quietly, his pen resting against the folded letter on the tray table. The ink was still damp in places, the words raw and uneven, imperfect, but honest. For the first time, he didn't feel the need to edit, to polish, to perfect. He looked around the cabin. Most passengers were stirring now, adjusting seats and stretching stiff limbs. The air smelled faintly of coffee and recycled air, yet something about it felt cleaner, lighter. Across the aisle, the little girl was asleep, her head resting against her stuffed bear, her hair a halo of curls against the seat. Her mother read a paperback, glancing down at her child every so often with that quiet tenderness only mothers had. He watched them longer than he meant to. There was something grounding about it, that simple, ordinary love. He thought of Emma again, wondering if she'd grown taller, if she still played piano, if she still wore her hair in messy braids like she used to. He smiled at the memory, the sound of her laughter, the way she'd always run to the door when he came home, before she learned not to expect him to. The seatbelt sign pinged on. The plane tilted gently downward. He felt the shift in gravity, the pull of the world beneath him, and realized how long he'd been floating, not just in the air, but in life. As they descended through the clouds, the sunlight caught the edge of the wing, scattering brilliance through the cabin. He reached into his jacket and slid the letter inside his inner pocket, close to his chest. This time, he wouldn't hide it away. He would send it, or better yet, deliver it himself. The engines quieted, the wheels met the runway with a low, steady thud. The girl stirred, blinking sleepily. He leaned slightly toward her and whispered, "Thank you." She smiled drowsily, still half dreaming. "You're welcome," she murmured, her voice soft as the fading hum of the engines. As the plane rolled toward the gate, he looked out at the sun-drenched tarmac, feeling the unfamiliar warmth of peace settling in his chest. For the first time in years, he wasn't just arriving somewhere. He was going home.